Hello plant friends, my name is Victoria and you're watching Plantastics. I'm just going to briefly show you a full shot of the violets that I have currently, and I'm going to be showing you two issues that you can have with your violets. One of them is sunburn and the second one is orange crust. So I have these two violets here that are going to be my examples. These are all doing perfectly fine and they don't really have any issues. I cannot figure out, well, we can talk about three. I'll talk about this one last because I just thought of it. But here is Picasso. As you know, I'm starting over. And I actually have two Picassos, and I had someone send me 2 leaves of a Picasso. So I have 3 different mother plants, basically, of Picasso. And this is one of them. Now, this one is beautiful. It has this beautiful, nice look to it. And it has these really large leaves on the outer parts. We've got some beautiful variegation. It's getting more and more variegation, basically, the longer that I have it. And I just want you to notice that there is a little bit of sunburn. And this is just from my lights being a little bit stronger than what it was used to. I messaged the seller simply because her leaves were humongous. Mine are okay, but these were huge. Like, I did remove some of them because they kind of got a little beat up in shipping, but they're just beautiful, nice, large show quality leaves. And she said she just used fluorescent lights. So these, I'm guessing, they're just a bit stronger than what she was using. So there is some sunburn. So most of the time when you do see sunburn, it is much worse than this. It's normally so bad that it's gone through the leaves. But you can see there's just a little bit of darkening here, and that's just sunburn. Now, the newer leaves are going to be fine, but since this plant is pretty much acclimating and getting used to my environment, I've been putting it in the window, and it just gets a little bit less of this LED light. So that's what it looks like. So this is a case of sunburn, but it's just not as severe as what most people are used to seeing. And also we've got some beautiful little flowers. Next we have a variety that I've honestly had for over a year as a leaf cutting, and it is just now created its own rosette, and it's large enough to have its own little pot here. And it is a standard, so it will get to where it's in a pot this size. And this is just one of the pots that I have, and I just put it in this cute little cauldron that I got from Target. And I'm kind of excited because this one's a regular standard, and this one back here is a large standard. That's the only large standard that I have, and I just really hope that the leaves can kind of like cover up this part right here and just really take over it, like it's kind of like a potion bubbling over. But that is that'll be something that happens in a couple months. So here we have PT Iania, and we've got a little bit of orange crust. So what is orange crust? Well, if you look here, you can see it is literally orange, and it's very crusty. It looks like a syrup or something. And I can tell you what causes it. So I had this happen to one of my violets forever ago, and I hadn't had it happen since. Like, that was over a year ago. So what I learned is that when you have the little baby plants, if you fertilize them and you don't give them fresh, like unfertilized water, you can run the risk. So this is just the plant releasing water, and they all do this. They all release water throughout their leaves and the trichomes. And when it's doing that, it is releasing some of that buildup fertilizer. And now this isn't too bad of a case, and it's easy to correct. You're just going to use regular water without any fertilizer for a while to like flush it out. You can also flush out the soil. I like to use one of the misters that I have just to not disrupt the roots or the soil, but you can also just use a regular watering pail and get that out of the soil, because it's basically just telling you, hey, this fertilizer is a little bit too strong and I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to purge my system by putting it out through the leaves. But so if you don't correct it and it continues to get worse, what will happen is the leaves can become necrotic. And basically a necrotic leaf is one that's going to die or is dying. So that's just something to note. and this is something that'll go away on its own simply now that I know. And I do use a different combination, and I've been experimenting with a different combination of things, and I'm going to tell you if it works or not at a later date. Right now I think I went a little too heavy-handed, and since then this one's been getting regular water. But for the other violets, even though none of the others are showing signs of orange crust at all, but pretty much the others I've just been using at half strength. So you can kind of see it here if you really look, that there's just a bit there. But yeah, the others seem to be doing really fine. But what I do now is I make a mix as directed on the label of the different combinations of fertilizers and mineral fluids and stuff. And now I've been putting a gallon of just plain distilled water, so it is at half strength. So hopefully I don't run the risk of this continuing to happen. So I'm going to show you. So you can see that the leaves on most of these are pretty flat, like they're gonna just like kind of flat, and then there's this one where the leaves are kind of going up. So I have strategically, I've added another light bar in there, but you'll notice that I have them to where the light is not the same throughout. So this honestly was not intentional at first. I just wasn't able to fit these, but it's actually turned out to be pretty beneficial. So what I've been doing is, if a plant needs more light, and you can tell this one just needs more light, I'll put it here. So it's going to get more light here, it's more directed. And if a plant needs less light, like this Picasso here, I'll move it further here. So there's like kind of like a dead spot right where these little flower peduncles are, and I could put it there, and that could resolve the issue. So when you're setting up your lights, it can be very tempting to make sure you have equal lighting throughout your shelving, but there is a benefit to setting them up in this way simply because you can kind of burn them, or you can not have enough light. So I've moved this one here, and it seems to, I've honestly not had it here for long enough to be able to tell if it's going to work or not. But yeah, so that's just something to note. In the leaves with darker backs and stuff, like they just seem to be kind of all over the place in terms of lighting. Here, this one has really dark leaves and they're completely flat. So, but the Texas 2 I had, it needed more light than some of my other violets, and it had darker leaves. So I guess it just kind of depends on the variety. So I can't even make a blanket statement and say the darker leaves are going to need more light. Now, honestly, the super variegated ones, honestly, I feel like they need less light, which doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if that's anyone else's experience, but yeah, I can't really make blanket statements because the only variegated violet that I've ever had has been Picasso. Now, I do have a ton of leaf cuttings that I'm starting, that I've done some trades with some friends and whatnot, and they have given me some really beautiful variegated violets. But it'll probably be 6 months or a year before I have a blooming full-size plant. And I'm experimenting and doing a completely different system with propagations, and it's simply because I was losing so many of them. So I kind of just watched some other people's videos and kind of just did something completely different. Like, I'm basically chopping the leaves up a lot, and of course cutting at a 45-degree angle so there's more surface area for the plants to absorb. I'm feeding them as soon as they get roots, and I'm also keeping them under a dome because I had some burning on the leaves, and the fog and condensation on the top of the dome is actually preventing a sunburn from happening, which is kind of cool. I guess you could call it bulb burn because there's no actual sun. And then if you're curious, this is my Tonderusa that I grew from a corm. It's taken a little over a year, and it's humongous. It is gigantic. And then there's one of my air plants. But yeah, so these are some of my violets. I do have more. I have two that are kind of just not doing great. They didn't ship really well. The temperatures have just gotten kind of balmy and nice, as in it's not 110 degrees outside. It's been 91, which is kind of funny to say that's balmy, but it feels balmy after it being that hot. But yeah, some of the violets that came in the mail, I think that they kind of got a little too hot on the way to me. So they're basically recovering. So I guess I'll show you a little bit more up close some of the violets that I do have that are doing pretty well. So this is Buckeye Cranberry Sparkler, and it's really beautiful. I love it. It's so cute. It's got these cute little, well, they're not really little. It's got these really nice double to semi-double flowers. Jolly Deer is I can't remember. It's not a standard. It's smaller than that. But I think it may be a miniature or a mini. I think it's a mini. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a mini. I've never had it bloom before. It literally just came in and I put it in here. Now, this is not the prettiest setup. It's not as clean and polished looking as some of my other pots, but I'm hoping I can find something to kind of set it in like this, because I feel like it's kind of boring how all my pots are the same. I really love seeing people with the porcelain pots, and those are really great, but those are out of my budget right now. So I've just been kind of experimenting. This one is going to be a really pretty one. And then I have Bob Surbin's, which is about the same size as this one. And it was from a leaf cutting as well. Now this is the trailer, and it is Kentucky Rambler. I have two trailers. I've never had trailers before. As you can see, this one is living and loving life. And my understanding is that you don't separate them. So you can see there's all these different rosettes forming. And this one's quite thirsty, so I may need to put it into a larger pot, one about this size. We'll see, because I have to water it every 2 to 3 days, and I've only had it in this pot for maybe 2 weeks. I mean, it's not been very long. So this is a standard, this is a mini, this is a trailer, this is a standard. Here's another standard here. This was one of the substitutions Lyndon Lyons sent me, and it's God of the Sun, and it's a Russian violet, and it's just so beautiful. I wouldn't call it a fantasy, but it does look like it's got some two-toned to the blooms. And it's kind of concerning, or it was at first. So the stems start off darker, and then they turn green as the bulb, or as the bloom matures. So it looks like it's not doing very well, but that's just how they look. So it's nothing to be alarmed over, because I had a whole bloom stalk that was turning like a dark color, and I pinched it off, and then these formed. And I was like, well, maybe that's just what that variety looks like, and it is. So here we have this one, Edge of Darkness, and it's got some blooms forming, if you can see in there, right there. You've got some teeny tiny blooms. It hasn't bloomed for me yet, but is going to probably by the end of September. This is Annoyed, and it has these very delicate, ruffled double blooms, and it's fixing to bloom too. And this is the large standard that I have, and it's a Russian as well. It's unique because the blooms are green. They're unlike anything I've ever had before in terms of color. Now, it is really nice. It's got some ruffled edges, and you can see, hopefully you can see if it'll focus, yeah. If you look at the petals, it almost looks like webbing. And what it's called is, this is what it's called. I'm going to attempt to say this. I don't really know if it's going to be correct, but it's Lesno Krushevo, and it's a Russian-Ukrainian hybrid. Repkina. Hybridizer, I guess, Repkina. And it's just really pretty. Now, I am going to go back to the way I did my naming tags before. So these get in the way, and what I like to do is, you'll probably see they'll still be on there. So I don't think I removed them. Maybe I did. Maybe I took this one off. but I like to take my time in memorizing them. And so I'll keep this there until I can like memorize, oh, this is Edge of Darkness just from a glance. And then what I'll do is I'll put the name on the outside of the pot, so you can't see it unless you take it out. And I do that because these just really damage the leaves. They have a way of kind of cutting into the leaves and just causing some damage. But yeah, so I do have more violets, but they're not blooming. But yeah, so I'm building back my collection. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, so just to reiterate, this is what orange crust looks like. You'll solve that by using less fertilizer. And then we've got this etiolation here where the leaves are just not really quite laying flat. And you'll improve that by providing more light. And then we've got sunburn, which is just the opposite. You're going to want to move it further from lights, decrease the time the lights are on, and so on and so forth. So each variety is so different and unique, and you just have to kind of look at them and see how they're responding to your growing conditions, because some plants really love this shelf and some of them really like being in other places in my house. So yes, thank you so much for watching. I'll be posting more violet content now that I have a violet collection again. And like this, comment, what's your favorite so far that I have now? And be sure to share this, and I'll be sure to see you next time. Goodbye.